This year I ended up playing more games than ever before. Unfortunately, this has made my Game of the Year list extremely hard to figure out. There was just a lot to choose from this year, and nothing really stood out like crazy, so it was even more difficult to figure out. Like usual, I will first talk about games I liked but had major issues with, plus some games I played a bit of but haven't gotten super into. Then we'll give my top 5 games of the year. Plus this year I will give a special shout out to some complete dog shit. The first game I want to talk about is Metroid Prime 4. If any game could be considered wasted potential, this would be it. The areas are all great, featuring all the great Metroid level design and some good bosses, besides the last one which was complete dog shit. But the issues with the game are too great to ignore, featuring complete dog shit writing and voice acting, and some of the most annoying characters ever featured in a video game. All the characters constantly glaze Samus non-stop, and they never seem to want to shut up.
Samus, it's really you. I don't even know what to say. Is this a new suit?
Shut the fuck up, okay? Shut the fuck up!
Plus, the game also features a massive, pointless open-world desert area that you have to go across every time you want to backtrack to an old area, which you have to do a lot, especially if you want to get a necessary upgrade from the main camp area. And if you thought you could teleport back to the old areas once you have visited them, no. You have to go back and forth every time, like you have never been to that area before. Even though you get a teleporter later in the game, but no, that won't work for Samus for some reason. Not to mention, the game blatantly lies to you by saying you can go to the areas in any order, but then actually says you have to go to this area first. And if that's not bad enough, in the desert there are collectible green crystal things. Sounds fun enough, until the game tells you in order to beat the game, you have to collect every single fucking one of them. This is the biggest load of crap I've ever seen. The only good thing about it is that there aren't too many crystals, but it's still a massive waste of grinding for no benefit. All in all, this game could have been way better if they just got rid of all this crap. It's like they realised the game was taking a ridiculously long time to make, so they just padded it with a load of extra shit without thinking if people would actually enjoy it. Next time, just make the game. The second game I liked but thought it had issues was Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. And unlike Metroid, where the issues were easily fixable, this game's issues are more of the game in general, as in Tears of the Grindem, on the whole being the issue. As much as I feel disdain for this open-world Zelda slop arc, I was somewhat pleasantly surprised with how this game turned out, with the story being a lot more interesting than in Tears of the Windem. I guess that's what happens when you actually get to play what's being shown on screen instead of watching flashbacks, where they tell you the same thing 50 billion times. And I also thought the Warriors gameplay was more fun than the last one, with the fusion mechanics and special moves adding to the gameplay. But it still has the glaring faults that come with being a Warriors game, based on Tears of Aonuma's green grass. I think if the next game goes back to what made the series good to begin with, and just have all the Zelda games be included, with a shit ton of fan service and levels based on different Zelda games alongside the new gameplay additions this game added, then it could be an all-time great game. But as for this game, it's still weighed down by Tears of the Korok Seeds. I will say though, the game being in 60 FPS as opposed to 20 makes a big difference. Now for some games I started playing but didn't get too far into to give a proper opinion on. The first game is Ghost of Yote. I really liked Ghost of Tsushima, despite it being very much open world slop, and honestly I think I like Yote even more. The content is a lot different this time. Instead of having a load of side story quests, which I thought were kinda tedious, you instead have different things like bounties of enemies to find and collect, and then different side quests that unlock different things. The game can get very tiring though, and it's a bit repetitive. Not to mention very long, meaning it's probably going to take me a while to finish it. But when you get into it, it's a lot of fun and very immersive. The other game is Expedition 33. This game has the title Clair Obscura, but this game is anything but obscure, as it's won about 8 trillion awards and everybody on the planet has already played it. But as for me, as someone who isn't a big fan of RPGs, and especially turn-based ones, I feel the game is pretty good. It does have some issues, with some of the bosses being a bit too ridiculous in difficulty, and some of the enemies just don't leave you alone when you want to get an item. And like Ghost of Yote, it's a bit too long, being around 30 hours, which is pretty long for a turn-based RPG, at least for me. But I think it does enough to make it engaging, and the world and levels are pretty fun to explore, with a load of secrets to find and cool platforming sort of sections. Though I think everybody has already said everything there is to say about this game, so I don't really need to say anything more. Now for the special shout out to complete dogshit. I may go on a bit of a rant here, but it's time to talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now when this game was first announced, I'll admit, I was actually kind of excited. I would have preferred a 2D Donkey Kong game, but from the looks of it, it seemed pretty fun, with some cool new areas and some 2D platforming sections, which made the lack of a 2D game less annoying. Then I played the demo and my excitement flatlined. It seemed to basically be just Mario Odyssey again, but instead of having the cool platforming missions, they instead relied entirely on filler content from Odyssey as the entire main content, with only a couple of the Odyssey platforming levels per area. Along with these weird challenges where you kill a random bunch of enemies, kinda like a test of strength in Breath of the Wild, but even more tedious. As well as the overworld being entirely destructible, meaning platforming was not the main focus, I was not looking forward to the main game, and when the game finally released, it was just as disappointing as I thought it was gonna be, if not more. The first level is probably one of the better levels in the game, which is not saying much, with the later levels being even more bland and starved for content. The actual story missions, like the ones in Odyssey, just consist of go to this place, hit thing, then maybe fight boss, then go to next level. Gone are the cool ideas, like go to Metro Kingdom's underground area to fight a piranha plant, or race in a big ball minigame. Instead you just get bosses and that's it. And the bosses aren't even that good to begin with them all consisting of the same basic idea of punching, getting to the top of the guy's head, and then punching that, and then making the weird key thing fall off that unlocks the hole to the next area. The whole plot just consists of going deeper into the ground, and then at the end you just go back up again. And as for the 2D levels, compared to Tropical Freeze, they are bland as shit, and they all look like they were made in dreams for some reason. And no, that is not a joke, they really do look like that. And if the game wasn't bad enough, we also have the worst Mario character as a sidekick, who is now an annoying kid who won't stop singing even though she says she can't sing because she is too shy, but then sings anyway, probably because the game is self-aware and knows no one wants her to. And if you thought you could stop the singing, don't worry about that, because you can. Just as once as you finish the game, of course. Yeah, who thought anyone would give a shit about turning off the bloody singing after already playing the fucking game? And also, even if you change the language, no matter what you change it to, she still sings in English. So what was even the point of changing the language? This game has so many baffling design choices, I have no idea how this game got approved. And to prove this planet is doomed to fail, people are saying this game is not only better than Odyssey, but miles better than Odyssey. I saw one asshole say it was the best 3D platformer ever, which first off, it's not even a 3D platformer. You punch things and destroy things, not jump on things, but even if it was, the best ever? Even better than Odyssey? Did any of these people even play Odyssey? Or is this just the first game they've ever played? Well, in any case, I hope it's a challenge for the people that made Odyssey, because I really hope the next Mario game is better than this. And yes, the people that made this game, some of them did work on Odyssey, but it was mostly new devs who were new with Nintendo, which I guess is one sigh of relief. But even still, Nintendo still made this crap.
I mean, he's the guy in charge. He's saying that this is entertainment. It's deplorable.
Anyway, I want to now give my top 5 games of the year. This was actually the hardest year for me, as I liked a lot of games I played this year, but none but one really stood out as amazing. But in any case, I found 5, so... At number 5 is the Taurus Deluxe. When the Taurus came out in 2019, I thought it was pretty fun, but I got pretty confused in what to do and never got too far. This year, the Taurus Deluxe came out with some new content and somewhat better visuals, so I thought I would give it another shot and got into it way more. It's a lot more puzzle oriented than I thought it would be, and the ending was weird and confusing, but the overall game is pretty fun. I like the mini-games you can do in the arcade, and going to the different islands is unique enough, with each offering a different feel. My only big complaint is the visual quality, with them using this really god-awful DLSS Switch 2 option, which adds a ton of aliasing and arguably makes it look worse than the original. Considering the PS5 could run the game at 8K native, having this game run at fake 4K, with image quality that is running at 720p internally with bad upscaling is very disappointing. But for a game that has a visual style of being blocky and low res, it's not the end of the world, but they really need to fix it. Number 4 is Metroid Samus Returns. This year I finished the rest of the 2D Metroid games that I hadn't played, including the Famicom Disk System version of Metroid, which was a fucking nightmare. But the best one was probably Metroid Samus Returns, the so-called prequel of sorts to Metroid Dread. And in comparison to Metroid Dread, it definitely feels like the prototype to that game, with it offering many of the same moves and ideas, but in a smaller way due to it being a 3DS game. But I still found it to be a lot of fun. The levels are all pretty unique, and while the bosses are very repetitive, with them being repeated a lot, they are still fun to kill. And the bosses that are unique are hard as balls. The biggest issue is probably the slight tedium of getting recharges of energy and power-ups. A lot of the time, there really isn't one around to refill you, so you have to go out your way to backtrack to get one. But it's not as bad as the other Metroid games in terms of backtracking. Overall, Samus Returns is great, and I really hope we get another 2D Metroid soon, because 3D just isn't as good at all. Number 3. Probably one of my biggest hot takes is that Pokemon X and Y is my favourite Pokemon game. So when they announced the next Legends game would be taking place in Lumio City, I was very excited. And while the game has a lot of issues, I still had a lot of fun with it. Going around the city and getting all the Pokeballs with the random upgrades and finding all the Pokemon in the wild zones is a lot more engaging now. The battling itself is also way faster than in the other Pokemon games, and unlike Legends Arceus, where the main gameplay was just doing random tasks, like getting the same Pokemon over and over again, or teaching them weird moves, this game feels way more like an actual Pokemon game. It may not have gyms, but it still has gym leaders of sort, and the story is pretty good too. The biggest issue with the game though is the pretty bad visuals, with everything being very flat. The game is still an upgrade from Violet, which isn't saying much, but it could have been a whole lot better considering it's on a new next-gen Nintendo system. Alongside that, it would have been nice if it was more than just Lumio City you could go to. But at the end of the day, for what the game is, it was fun, and that's all I really want. It's nothing amazing, but it's simple and good for that. Hopefully the next Pokemon game that is actually a proper Switch 2 exclusive has better visuals though, because at that point there really is no excuse. Number 2. Last year I made a confession that I had never finished Mario 3. Well, this year I'm making an even worse confession. I have never finished Zelda 1. I obviously had played it before, but I never got to level 9 and defeated Ganon till this year. And because of this, I'm using it as an excuse to put it at number 2 because I don't know what else to put here. But as for the game itself, it's nothing short of amazing. And it's one of the few NES games that has aged super well. Sure, there are some cryptic things in it like birding the right bush and bombing a non-descriptive hole in a dungeon, but most of that stuff is optional, and you could easily play the game to completion without using a guide. Though a map would probably still help a lot, since the game's map kinda sucks. But they did give you a map with the game, so you could say the map they give you in the box is part of the game in a way. I don't want to say too much more about this game right now, since I'm still working on my Zelda retrospective review series. But I'll just say that it's one of the best NES games, and it's a whole lot better than Metroid, which fucking sucks. Now before I give my Game of the Year, I want to give an honourable mention to Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 on the Switch. I would have given it my Game of the Year if not for the fact they already released Mario Galaxy on Switch with 3D All-Stars. And it didn't really do enough to make it any different to that apart from the quote-unquote better textures and higher resolution visuals. Regardless, they are the best games ever, so in a way they win Game of the Year every year. Now for my Game of the Year. This year there are a lot of games, but there was one game that has taken so many years to come out and has been highly anticipated. And I'm not talking about GTA 6. Because it's still not out. But of course it's Mario Kart World. The first Mario Kart in over a decade, and was it worth the wait? Kinda? The tracks are some of the best in the series has to offer, and the music is godly, featuring a shit ton of amazing remixes. The P-Switch missions are fun, offering cool platforming-esque obstacle courses, and the intermission courses really suck. Yeah, the biggest issue with Mario Kart World is how they have forced these weird intermission courses between the real courses, and they feel like such a tacked-on addition. A lot of people have theorized that this game was not even going to have an open world part, and they just added it on later, much like Metroid Prime 4. But unlike Metroid Prime 4, the actual tracks are so good that it doesn't matter as much, along with the fact you can somewhat ignore the intermissions. Or well, you could, before Nintendo updated the game and forced you to play the intermissions online. Anyway, the best mode to experience the tracks is probably the time trial mode. Or you could try join a private lobby that only has 3 laps as an option. The other big issue with the game is the price. $80 or £75 for a game is outrageous. Especially considering the game technically is nothing groundbreaking, feeling like a Switch 1 game beefed up. The only saving grace is that if you bought the Switch 2 bundle, you could get the game for way cheaper. Almost like they knew the game cost too much. At any rate, I hope we get DLC sooner than later, and I hope it's also free considering how much they are charging for the game already. So that was 2025. I was really expecting a new 3D Mario game this year, but now I don't know what to think. Maybe we'll get one next year because of the movie, but at this point anything could happen. Anyway, tell me what your Game of the Year was in the comments, and hopefully in 2026 they finally start making trailers with actual gameplay, because holy shit, it's getting so bad. Also, the worst Game of the Year was Nintendo Switch Welcome Tour. Fuck that piece of shit.